Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna be looking at the Summa, a question from the Summa, and it's the infinity of God. So this is a question, and it has articles as I've explained in the prior videos. But let's get started because it's pretty in depth. So how I take my notes is, well, first of all, usually I tend to read the book first out loud. Um, to give me a general broad overview, and then I go in later when I'm writing my notes. I'm typing and I'm thinking what Aquinas is saying. you know say things in your own words, paraphrase them, make it understandable to you, and that's the best way to learn, I think, for philosophy. And one day I'll post to you guys how to study philosophy on your own. There's many great websites, so yeah, that's a video for next time, guys. But let's get started. Article 1. So, Article 1 just asks whether God is infinite, and the answer is yes. Aquinas, yes, says obviously God is infinite, right? That's literally every conception of, a monotheistic God. Now, monotheistic religion, right? Monotheistic God. Yeah, but monotheistic religion, which just says, one God only. Now, Aquinas says that to be infinite is simply the negation to be finite. So what that means is just that it's a negative concept. By negative, he means negation, like not finite, right? And matter, just like how dark is just not light, right? It's not light. It's the absence of light. And matter is made by is made finite by form in a certain way. Why? Because prime matter is in a way relatively infinite, even though it's not absolutely infinite. And the form is also made finite by matter in a certain way. So matter limited by form, and form limited by matter. Right? So it's a two-way relationship. So matter is made finite by the form because when it receives a form, matter is in potential to many forms, right? For example, before the form, matter could go to that or that form, like let's say A form or B form or C form. So it's infinite in the sense that it's just infinitely in potential to many forms. But when it gets a specific form, it's terminated, right? That infinite potential is terminated by the one it receives. So likewise, form is made finite by matter because considered by itself, the form, it's open to many, but when it's received in matter, it's also contracted or limited to this one particular thing. So form and matter limit each other, right? They eliminate the potential to which they can be considered. Now, matter is, even though it's limited, it's actually perfected or actualized by form, which it is made finite. Remember, in Aquinas' or Aristotelian philosophy, prime matter is just pure potential. Matter is just potential, right? And potential or matter doesn't actually exist on its own. It has relative being, meaning that it only exists in virtue when it's contracted with a form. So infinite is going to be attributed to matter because it has an imperfect nature. No, sorry, it has an imperfect nature. And infinite is still going to be attributed to matter because, like I said, matter is in potential to so many things. It's infinitely in potential to this, that, blah, blah, blah form, right? But form, on the other hand, it's not perfected by matter. It's made contracted by matter. It's limited, right? It's not perfected. And so the infinite on the part of the form, not determined by matter, is in and of itself perfect and has a perfect nature. So the form before the matter is perfect and it has a perfect nature. But you can also just say the form independent of matter. Now, God as a divine being is not received in anything, but he is his own subsistent being. He is his own subsistent thing. Therefore, God is infinite and perfect. And quantity is also terminated by its form. For example, let's take a shape like a circle or a square or a triangle, which is a specific way of limiting quantity. Is a type of form that gives, quantity a definite outline. So basically, if I was to, clarify this or reword it, whenever you think of a quantity, and quantities in this sense can be secondary quantities, as I've discussed, from the categories like shapes, or like a surface, like a rectangular surface. When you conceive of a shape, it's a specific way of limiting quantity, and it's a, and a shape has a definite outline, right? Obviously, for example, a triangle has a definite outline which differs from that of a rectangle. So that's what simply what it means. And therefore, the infinite of quantity is just attributed to the infinite of matter, and such kind of infinity is not going to be said of God. Because God is subsisting being, he is not received in anything and is infinite, and he is distinguished from every other being. Just like if whiteness existed on its own, not in anything else, that alone would make it different from all other whitenesses found in things. Alright, let's get to the second article. Whether anything but God can be essentially infinite. And so the answer is yes, only God can be essentially infinite. Now, the infinite defined by Aristotle cannot have a beginning, absolutely, an absolute infinity. But everything that's not God is God's creature and is from God as its first principle. So besides God, nothing is truly or essentially infinite because they're from him, they're created. Now, things that are not God can be called infinite, but only relatively infinite, but not absolutely infinite. So, like I've said, matter, as it exists under a substantial form, it is in potential to many accidental forms, which is absolutely finite, but is also relatively infinite. For example, wood is finite according to its own form, but it is relatively infinite because it is in potentiality to an infinite number of shapes. But if we speak of infinity when talking about forms, the forms that are received into matter are absolutely finite. Any created forms that are not received into matter, like the immaterial angels, they're going to still be relatively infinite. This is because a created form subsisting has being. So angel, even though it's created and it's subsisting, it doesn't have its being from its own. It receives its being, right? And it has a time when it was created. And so since it receives its existence or being from another and is contracted to determinate nature, so it's not infinite in the way God is, right? And thus these forms are not absolutely infinite. So anything made or created has its essence separated or really distinct from its existence. This is because a subsisting being is not made or created at all. Therefore, anything that is made or created is not absolutely infinite. Now, although God's power is infinite, he cannot make anything else absolutely infinite, because he cannot make a thing not made, because for this would imply that two contradictories are true at the same time, as Aquinas puts it. So to clarify why God cannot make an infinite thing or make a thing not made is because a absolute infinity has no beginning, no end. A absolute infinity is not created. It doesn't have a beginning. So God cannot simply make a made thing not made. That's just contradictory, right? And the paradox that I always see that challenges the omnipotence of God is that could God create a rock so powerful that God himself cannot lift? No, because God cannot do anything contradictory. Alright, moving on. Now, although the power of the intellect extends itself to infinite things in a way, this is because the intellect is a form not in matter, but it is either completely separated from matter, like angels, or an intellectual power not tied to any organ, as in the human soul. And so prime matter does not exist by itself, as I've said, because it is assumed to be non-being or non-existence, but only potentially being. So it is concreated, meaning that it's created together with something, for example, form, rather than created itself. So prime matter isn't absolutely infinite because its potentiality can only extend to natural forms. Alright, Article 3. Whether an infinite magnitude can exist. So, a magnitude just literally means size, right? Think of a size when you hear magnitude. A magnitude of this surface. A magnitude of this body. So it implies size, but size implies body, and body implies surface, and every surface is finite. Since surface is the term of a finite body, therefore it follows logically that all bodies are finite, and so nothing can be infinite in magnitude. Now, Aquinas does distinguish. It is one thing to be infinite in essence, and two to be infinite in magnitude. Now Aquinas says, okay, let's concede that there is an infinite magnitude, such as air or fire. I mean, not concede, or yeah, you can say concede for the sake of the argument. So let's say we just concede for the sake of the argument. Let's suppose that there is an infinite magnitude, air or fire. These, however, are not infinite in essence, since its essence is terminated, which just means grouped or defined in a species by its form. So it's limited, it's contracted to that. And it would also be contracted or confined to individuality by matter, right? Now a body or a complete magnitude is considered in two ways. One way, you can consider it mathematically in respect to quantity only, and two, naturally in respect to its matter and form, which is, what a substance is composed of. Now, no natural body is actually infinite, because every natural body has a substantial form. Now, remember, upon following a form necessarily certain things necessarily arrive. For example, accidents. It is necessary then that determinate accidents follow upon a determinate form, since the form limits the matter or the body, right? Among these accidents, it happens that quantity is one of them. So every natural body has a determinate quantity, as you can say that it's bigger or smaller or greater. Thus, this proves no natural body is actually infinite. Now, this is also proven from movement, as Aquinas says, because every natural body has some natural movement, right? But an infinite body, it doesn't have natural movement, neither direct, because nothing moves naturally by a direct movement unless it is out of its place. But this is impossible, right? Because if you understand what infinite body means, then it's everywhere. And so therefore it occupies every place, and motion would then be impossible, or natural motion would then be impossible, and likewise circular motion as well. Now, if we imagine a mathematical body actually existing, notice that we have to imagine it existing under some form, because nothing is actual or made into being except by its form. And since quantity's form is figure, the body has to have a shape, and every shape has boundaries, and boundaries imply finiteness in things. Thus, a mathematician doesn't have to posit that a line is actually infinite, because he only needs to take a finite line in which he subtracts which he finds necessary and calls it infinite. Now, although infinity is not against the notion of magnitude in general, it is against the species of any magnitude. For example, it is against the nature of cubical or tribucal. Oh, I think I spelled it wrong. Yeah, I meant tricubical, not tribucal. My bad, guys. But yeah, it's against the tribucal magnitude, and this also applies to triangular and circular. And because what is not possible in any species does not exist in the genus, since the genus contains all of that in the species implicitly and undividedly, therefore there cannot be an infinite magnitude, because no species itself is infinite in magnitude. Now, as regards to matter, the infinite in quantity belongs to matter, as we have already proposed. And division of the whole leads to matter, because parts have the aspect of matter. So division of the whole obviously leads to part, and leads to matter. Now, by addition, however, we approach the whole, which has the aspect of a form. So the infinite is not in the addition of magnitude, but only in division. So it's not, adding, it's only divided. Now Now movement and time are wholes successively. So successively means that one thing comes after another, like A, then B, then C, then D. That's what it means by successively. So movement and time are wholes successively, not actually. So they combine potentiality with actuality, but magnitude, however, is an actual whole. Thus, infinity in quantity relates to matter, not to the whole of magnitude, but it does apply to the whole of time and movement, because matter is defined by potentiality. Article 4, whether an infinite multitude can actually exist. Aquinas says no. Aquinas says that it can potentially possibly exist, but not actually, right? Aquinas says that a multitude is said to be infinite absolutely when it is necessary for something to exist. But this is impossible. Why? Because then it would mean something depended on an infinity for its existence, and therefore its generation would never come, right, to be, since it's impossible to pass through an infinite medium. Because there's always going to be something prior to that thing, prior to that thing, and prior to that thing, prior to that thing, because that's the definition of infinity. And so an accidentally infinite multitude is one where its existence is not necessary and is merely accidental. Now Aquinas also claims accidentally infinite multitudes are impossible, because every multitude has to belong to a species, and no species of number is infinite, because every number is a multitude measured by one. And because measurement needs limit and necessitates finite, therefore no infinite multitude, even accidentally, is actually possible. Hence, everything created is comprehended in a certain number. However, Aquinas does concede that a potentially infinite multitude is possible, since the more you divide, the more parts you get. Now, every potentiality is made actual according to its mode of being, which just means way of being. Meaning, not all potentialities become actual in the same way, or come into existence in the same way. For example, a day is not actual all at once, but successively, right? Then one thing follows after another. Number can increase endlessly, but never exists as a completed actual infinity. Now, although figure like shape or boundary, species are infinite potentially. They are not actual all at once, since their infinity stems from number, which is never completed in actuality. And while nothing in reality blocks more beings from existing, like beings coming into existence after, oh sorry, someone texted me, but sorry, I'm gonna keep going. Still, no species is actually infinite. Multitude is actually infinite, or can be infinite, and therefore an actual infinite multitude cannot exist. And that's basically it for Aquinas on the infinity of God. Thanks for watching.